Poprvé chcem povedať, že bol opäť veľmi nevydarený summit Európskej únie a krajín Západného Balkánu.
First of all, I want to say that it was once again a very unsuccessful summit of the European Union and the Western Balkan countries. Unsuccessful in that, during the main part, where all the talks and discussions were supposed to take place, a large number of prime ministers and presidents of EU countries were absent, which undermines credibility the process of bringing the European Union closer to the Western Balkans. Because in this case, we are also talking about bringing the European Union closer to the Western Balkans. Again, a lot of general talk, without any specific promises. And what saddens me the most is that Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić had to resort, and I understand this, had to resort to an unconventional step and announce that he is deliberately not participating in this summit, because for several years European institutions have been stringing Serbia along. Serbia is well prepared and is undertaking serious reforms, headed by an absolutely experienced European and world politician like Aleksandar Vučić, but the double standards are evident. Therefore, we can discuss and talk about the fact that it is an evaluation based on the fulfillment of specific reforms and commitments. But it is not so. Only political criteria work. If you like someone, you speed them up. If you don't like someone, you slow them down. And Serbia, as a proud, sovereign country, belongs to the group that is being slowed down, and that really saddens me greatly. To complete this, Serbia also did not agree with the conclusions that were adopted within the framework of this summit. In any case, we see two countries that are decently prepared, and those are Albania and Montenegro. Slovakia is a great supporter of EU enlargement, and therefore it would be good for us to accept some decisions by 2030 in relation to some countries. But I warn again against the double standards currently being applied to Serbia. It is harmful to the entire European Union. It is harmful to the credibility of the European Union as an extremely serious international institution. We also talked about competitiveness. We talked about geopolitics, about China, about the United States. But that was more of a general political discussion, and I am getting to the financing of Ukraine, because the EU is aware of certain financial needs that Ukraine as a country, which is a part of the armed conflict, has. I will now be very diligent, because just imagine what those children in kindergarten will be up to again in Bratislava. I am now talking about the opposing kindergarteners. And this very one who went with the mandate that Slovakia will not be part of any war loan for Ukraine. This is the mandate I announced at the meeting of the European Committee. I will repeat once again that Slovakia will not be part of any military loan for Ukraine, and that we reject further financing of military needs from Slovak Republic sources, because we do not believe in military a solution to the conflict. In the first part of the debate, which was on this topic, I spoke in Ukraine and said that I cannot support the conclusions regarding Ukraine as long as these conclusions include anything regarding a war loan for Ukraine. And it does not matter whether it is based on frozen Russian assets or on any other basis. Therefore, I announce that I have kept my word. If you look at the conclusions, please confirm this to avoid any doubts. The conclusions on Ukraine were supported by only 25 member states. The conclusions were not supported by Slovakia and Hungary. I repeat, it concerns the conclusions on Ukraine. You may ask me why I only objected to the part regarding attempts to use frozen assets, because that was also a possible avenue. But the connection of those conclusions on Ukraine with the part about the potential use of frozen assets is so huge that it simply couldn't be separated. Therefore, for the first time, I refused to vote on the conclusions regarding Ukraine. It has nothing to do with the fact that we continue to acknowledge Ukraine's European ambitions. That has nothing to do with it. I just don't want anyone to find any pretext and say that Fico voted for the conclusions and that something is part of the decision and that Slovakia will be part of the military loan for Ukraine. It has perhaps been as long as 2 weeks since I sent an open letter to Antonio Costa. This letter reached all the prime ministers, where I said, Antonio, sorry, I cannot allow Slovakia to be part of any military loan for Ukraine. You may, of course, have a different opinion. I said that I also have serious personal reasons. We must fully respect the sovereign positions of each prime minister. Yesterday, we just needed to coordinate some things related to a very challenging situation. The text that was submitted concerning frozen assets. Well, you probably know this, as you work and live here. You know that a complex document has emerged, which, in my opinion, even bankers wouldn't process, let alone prime ministers. That is, it is simply impossible to work this way. You cannot throw a document on the table for the prime ministers that has, I don't know, 50 points, which is full of complicated financial schemes where we cannot anticipate what the impacts might be. And this, it's not enough to just pick up the phone and call home to ask what this might mean. That's why we met and clarified some things. The volume wasn't entirely clear in terms of what scale we were discussing when it comes to frozen assets. It wasn't further clear what the participation of those states would be in terms of guarantees. Russia may well have economic problems. I am not an expert on that. But militarily, it is clearly holding its ground. It is a fatal mistake to believe that Russia can be defeated in a conventional war on territory such as Ukraine or the Russian Federation. I am not advocating capitulation, God forbid. I am simply asking whether it is necessary for another 500,000 people to die. Do we really need another 500,000 dead by 2027 if the outcome remains the same? Would it not have been wiser to acknowledge that an agreement will likely be reached anyway, over Donbass, Lugansk, Crimea, the sharing of electricity from the Zaporozhye power plant, and security guarantees for both Russia and Ukraine? Instead of fueling destruction once again, wouldn't it have made more sense to provide Ukraine with $90 billion to rebuild what is broken, including Ukraine's energy system, schools, hospitals, and daily life? That is why I do not believe the decision taken yesterday under enhanced cooperation by 24 member states will strengthen Ukraine. On the contrary, it risks leading only to further senseless killing. President Zelensky spoke about some aspects of the peace negotiations. It was quite interesting to hear what he said there. But I still think, and I hope President Zelensky won't be angry with me, that I did not see any great interest on his part in ending this war conflict. I don't know. Maybe it's my subjective opinion, a feeling, but I did not see any great interest in ending it quickly. Believe me. Of course, he is pleased. Now they give him 20. Counting 7 minus 3, 24 member states will give him 90 billion over 2 years. He mainly wants it for weapons. He even says it openly, I mainly want it for weapons. Is this European peace policy? I want nothing to do with such European peace policy. For 3 years, you all have been convincing us. The media, President Zelensky, the opposition, and others. Russia is losing. Everything is okay. They are incapable of anything. And suddenly, someone starts to scare the whole world, saying, watch out, Russia will attack the whole world now. How can someone attack the whole world who, a year ago, was not able to occupy a single dusty road or some small village and is fleeing from that village? An unbelievably dangerous foundation has been established, which people simply do not trust. Do you think you can just persuade a person to believe some nonsense? Then let's be respectful towards these mutual pieces of information. For me, propaganda is the same in the West as it is in the East. From this point of view, we are absolutely not. We did not talk about it because I think it seemed more like they wanted to get rid of the problem, like, let's give him money and let him fight. This is like, Let's give him money. Yes, that's my feeling from the summit. Let's give him money so we don't have to deal with it for 2 years. Let them fight it out over there. This is not my cup of tea. Mr. Reporter, we keep going in circles on the same issue. I could show you a photo of myself with Gaddafi. I could show you many photos that would shock you. So what? Does that mean I should automatically trust or distrust someone just because a picture exists? Is there a photo of Donald Trump with Epstein? Probably. There are likely more than one. So let me ask you the same question. Does the American president lose my trust because such a photo exists? Of course not. Donald Trump has my trust, and I believe that what he is doing is right.
Tak mi postavte tú istú otázku. Má americký prezident Donald Trump u mňa dôveru za to, že existuje fotka s Epsteinom? Samozrejme, že má dôveru. A verím, že to, čo robí, je správne.